Good morning, and welcome to Voices for the Future. I'm Margaret Ann Hennon, a member of the PRSA College of Fellows and of Minnesota PRSA. With me today is Jim Lukaszewski, APR, Fellow PRSA. Jim is also accredited and a fellow in IABC. Jim is well known to many of us. He is a writer, an author, teacher, scholar, ethicist, and lecturer on American public relations. Jim has literally devoted years of his time and energy to the ethical practice of public relations. He has served PRSA and our members in many ways over the years, including 35 years on BEPS, the PRSA National Board of Ethics and Professional Standards. In the years 1998 and 2000, Jim was a member of the 8-person BEPS team who reviewed and produced the current PRSA Code of Ethics. He knows this Code of Ethics up one side and down the other, and is an authority on all things ethics. Jim is going to talk us through an important case study illustrating some of his insights into ethical public relations practice and ethical leadership. Jim?
Thank you so much. Always great to be with you, and great to be a part of this program. I'm going to tell a story about an illegal altering of a medical product used by millions of mostly senior Americans, a device that is inserted actually into their bodies. And as I walk through this, you'll see how interesting this turns out to be, and it's a very unusual case. At the time the situation occurred, there were very competitive circumstances in this industry. The leading manufacturer of this important product felt the need to aggressively work to retain its market share. So at a meeting held in their Boston manufacturing facility for this particular product, all the involved executives, designers, engineers, and production people were talking about how to maintain their competitive advantage. As this meeting concluded, the senior vice president for that division stood up and made a brief pitch. He concluded his pitch by saying, "Do whatever it takes, guys, to keep this market share intact." He had just essentially started a major corporate catastrophe. What ensued was more or less a frantic effort to modify 2 other products using much more affordable materials and production processes. The company, however, failed to notify the FDA that they were making modifications to this product, which is frankly a black and white violation of federal medical product manufacturing law. I came aboard with the company the day after the FBI visited, or shall we say, raided the plant and confiscated everybody's laptop files and other evidence that had been modified, that these products were being modified without the federal procedures. We're presuming that it was reported to the FBI or the Department of Justice by an employee, but that's supposition. To make a rather long story short, the case took 7 years from the time it was filed by the U.S. Department of Justice to a courtroom in Boston where the president of the company, they might say the 3rd president since that now long ago FBI raid, stood in the federal court and allocuted to what the company had done. All of you fans of Law and Order know what allocution is. It's when the criminal cuts a deal with the court, but in order to get that deal, he or she has got to stand up himself or herself and say out loud specifically what she's pleading guilty to, okay? I worked with the criminal lawyers to draft the plea agreement. This is very unusual, but I had the advantage of working with an amazing law firm, a criminal law firm from Washington, D.C. We knew that basically these things had happened, that there was going to be a kind of a trial, but in essence, the goal was to plead out something. So it took a couple of years to get that done. 6 people were convicted and went to prison. And ultimately, the chairman himself was indicted at the beginning, but was acquitted during the trial. A whole interesting other story, okay? Typically, I wouldn't be talking to you about these things in a criminal case because basically there are laws in place that take care of this, mete out the punishment through the courts and that sort of thing. But the difference here is that that everybody in this particular plea, you might say, had different codes of conduct that they were responsible for. Medical people had enforceable codes of conduct, which they had violated. Medical personnel who were experts in these areas had also done the same thing. So while they might not be tried in a court of law, they were going to be tried by their own professions, and some of them would be ultimately punished as a part of this whole sector. So what was also different about this circumstance was that rather than duck their responsibilities, as these companies often do, and they hire communications firms and experts who, kind of push way things down the road somewhere, euphemize stuff, metaphorize things, to just really, in essence, in my experience, put off the day when reality strikes. The difference was I was hired by the company to exactly go into this mode, to work with the lawyers, get the disclosures done and organized, so when it was necessary, we could get it done. It was a whole different approach. And it's a nice story. It takes a little lengthy to tell, but in essence, I really lucked out in this case because in most cases, the lawyers have much more authority and they exercise it. And they tend, as you already know, to want to have control over everything. I just quickly say that I met the chief lawyer at the beginning of this case. We had a conversation in a limousine in a Boston airport because we couldn't get together. He said, I just want to talk to you about this whole thing. He said, the company likes you, they trust you. So here's the deal, Jim. You do the PR, I'll do the law. You got any questions about the law? These 6 guys in the car will give you their cards, and you can call them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they will teach you what you ever need to know, okay? So I do the law, you do you got it? Yes, I got it. And it was an extraordinary experience from that perspective, okay? So essentially what happened was the goal from the start really turned out to be to set a whole new ethical tone in this company. It was a great company. They're still alive. They're still operating. Whenever I lecture about this in ethics courses, they say, well, Jim, how can this be a great company? No, and 29 people died and 100 were injured. It's a great company. We're saving millions of lives every day with other products. And the fact is they survived criminal prosecution, which doesn't always happen. Anyway, they hired an upfront specialist firm to review all codes of ethics and ask employees to participate, which is often not done. It's done for the bosses, and that's where the reports go. But in this case, these people were just very enlightened about this, and they involved employees. And the reason I talk about this is because they really were, and in fact, there were factions in management and employees who refused to believe the company was guilty from the beginning. They sort of figured the government made it up or something like that. They actually believed that these charges were not possible because they believed so strongly in this company, and the company deserved that kind of loyalty. This was just a horrible screw up, for which they're going to pay a big price, or did pay a big price. The CEO of the company at the time, I met briefly, but he resigned because he really did not want to admit what had happened. But so the board of directors said, well, we appreciate your work here, Bob, but we got to save the company from this. So he was retired with a wonderful, comfortable big payment, because all these big execs always get big payments. You never want to worry about these people; they're always well taken care of. And there was a series of CEOs as we get through the 7 years of the trial, plus three and a half years of supervision by a special master of the company. But what was neat about this, and the point of my conversation is that this involving employees in depth in this sort of situation actually was an accident. I saw the questionnaire of these specialists, and there was nothing in there about employees, so I added a question. What do employees believe that that executive responsibility is in a crisis? Okay. And I was just astounded by they just dug in and gave really fantastic information. And I really want to share what they developed. They developed a document which we call the ethical expectations of leadership. I published it, had permission to publish it widely. And today it exists as the 7 ethical expectations of leadership. And let me walk through this with you, because This is the outcome of a lot of struggle, a lot of discussion within the company, but really well-meant work to get things done and put back right, as it were. The company actually ultimately pled guilty to 391 felonies. One's bad enough. And they paid a fine of almost $200 million. And they also paid for the medical costs and the funeral costs for all people involved in the case. I'll get back to that in a minute. But let me just walk through these 7 items because it's so interesting. You just learn a lot by listening and remember where it came from. The employees themselves wanted to hear management, but they also had opinions of their own, and they're well reflected in this document. So here they are, 7 ethical expectations of leadership in a crisis. First, find the truth as soon as possible. Tell that truth and act on it promptly. Secondly, promptly raise the tough questions and answer them thoughtfully. This includes asking and answering questions yet to be asked or thought of by those who will be affected by whatever the circumstances are. This is pretty different, don't you think? The idea is generally, get a list of 6 questions and ignore the rest. This one we asked the employees, said, we have questions. So we opened a question bank, so to speak. Third, teach by parable as opposed to data. Bosses like data. And the problem with data is the more data you use, the more stupid you make people feel. But if you're telling true stories that illustrate the problems, both positively and negatively, it's very powerful, and employees can come together over that. Fourth, teach the values and ideals of a business, what employees and others bring to work every day, not just what the bosses think it is. Involve people in these discussions and put these rules and values together and then work on them, as you'll see. 5, walk the talk, be accessible. Help people understand the organization in the context of its values and ideals at every opportunity. Every meeting, every gathering of employees and families, someone talked about some aspect of the company values. This is really amazing how they enjoy doing this. Help, expect, and this is number 6, help, expect, and enforce ethical leadership, okay? People are watching, people are counting, people know when lapses occur. And especially because when lapses occur, trust is broken throughout their system. And as I said earlier, we believe that some employees were feeding information to the FBI and to the other Justice Department lawyers and stuff. And this often happens because they want to take responsibility because the big shots can't, so to speak, or won't. And the result was really a good one as this thing moved forward. Just 3 more, very interesting. 7, preserve, protect, defend, and foster ethical pathways to the top of the organization. Very important, because in so many cases when ethical infractions occur, people have nowhere to go. They know where they should go, but it's not promoted. It's not made available. This is a very important issue to think about. So, and they thought about it from one specific angle, which I found very interesting. They especially pointed out the people who get exposed to these problems, which almost always start at the top of the organization, are the up and coming leaders in the company. And so they need a protected way to talk about what they know, but they won't talk because they're in a growth track. They're in a success track, and they feel that if I talk about this, my career may be ended at this company. So it was so interesting how insightful these people were. 8, be a cheerleader, model, and teacher of ethical behavior. Ethical behavior builds and maintains trust. This is the reason we do it. In fact, to have trust in an organization requires that its leaders act ethically constantly. And the final one is interesting. Make values at least equal to profits or personal gain. We're aware of the old mantra, the business of business is business and that sort of thing. But those rules are changing. There are new kinds of corporations being formed. They're called B corporations, where actually by law, you're allowed as a profit-making and stock kind of company to use profits for other things than just giving it back to shareholders or buying back shares. This is very interesting. There are these companies in every state. I think there's only 2 states that haven't passed these laws, but they're coming along and get done. But there's great philosophy in workers that's forcing these companies to change their thinking and change it dramatically this way. So the idea of making values at least equal to profits or personal gain is a major step towards being trusted. What we learned overall in the comments from employees when we surveyed this and began to look at how we could use it, it was really interesting. Most people, there's data to support it and stories. Most people seem to enjoy working more when they're with organizations they respect, people they trust, leadership they can rely on, and who respects employees. This is really cool, important stuff, guys. So I don't know how we can arrange this, but we can talk about this. But I'd be happy to ship this, make it available somehow easily to you, so you can use it and benefit from it as well. Very wise words from a lot of people who really worked hard for this, and the company paid a big price, but they survived, and they're still leaders in their field. So there's a good ending to this story. There you go.
Well, thank you, Jim. My gosh, once again, I learned from you, and you've provided so much to the body of knowledge of public relations over your career, and we continue to learn from you every time I talk with you.
Thank you
And
so
I
much.
greatly appreciate you taking the time to share with us
And we're
today.
neighbors, so it's easy.
Thank you.
Yep.